Dr. Sanu.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. My homage go to the blessed one, the exalted one, and the watching one. Administrative officers, lecturers, students, and especially our distinguished guest, Professor Dr. G. Clinton Godart. Also, my very good morning to our lecturers, and especially Ajahn Prama Nantakon Piyapani, Assistant Professor. He is the Director of the Buddhist Studies Program, International Program. And all of the audiences, it is my great honor, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the very special activities and events. Okay, we invited the most insightful lecturers from Tohoku University, Professor Clinton G. Godart. Actually, me and him, we are best friends. Yeah, we know each other like more than 7 years, something like that. And I also have a very good chance to be, I was invited to give lecture to a very beautiful, students at the Tohoku University. And that was my first time visiting one of the very good Japanese university. And so impressed. And today we invited him back to give some very good lecture on the Guanyin Bodhisattva in Japan. So I'm sure that every students, including two programs from PhD in Buddhist Studies and MA Studies, which is already here, and we also have other students from other faculties and other programs to join this very special moment together. And of course, this event is part of the subjects. Yeah, it's under two subjects. It's called Seminar on Buddhism and SDGs. As you know that SDGs stands for Sustainable Development Goals. This is the subject, a very important subject in PhD. And another subject is named Buddhism and Sustainable Development in MA level. Okay, so I do hope that all of the IBSC students and including other students from other functions will learn and will share your very good experience. And we also preserve the Q&A session, the question and answer, which is compulsory for the graduate studies learning process. So I wish that after the insight talk given by him, then there will be some time for our students to discuss more about many questions that you may have. Yeah, I observed that some of the students even eager, to know just before his speech. Yeah, there was some student, came and asked him. So make sure that you learn from the Q&A session, okay, to get the knowledge and all benefits that the program carefully arranged this for you. I would like to say that this is not funny thing. This is not non-academic thing, but this is seriously academic arrangement for everyone, because this is regarded as one tura. One tura is a burden. Tura is burden, right? According to Buddhism, we have two burdens, two kind of biggest burdens for our life. According to the words given in the Dhammapada commentary, in the Dhammapatatthakatha, the commentary to the Dhammapada, the words of the Buddha, it is a statement given in the first section is Yamaka, Yamaka Waka. There is one time that the Buddha gives some instruction to Venerable Jakupala Thera, who asked the Buddha how many, duras in Buddhism. The Buddha said that there are two. And I would like to emphasize that what we are doing right now, right here today, is to fulfill the first kind of dura is called Kanta Dura. So the Buddha say in this one, he said that Attano Panyanurupena เอกังวาทเววานิกายเยสกรังวาปนะเตปิตกังพุทธวจนังอุกันหิตวาตัสสะธารนังกัทนังวาจะนังติอิทังคันทะจุรังนามะ to study the words of the Buddha พุทธวจนะ one nikaya two nikayas or the whole Tipitaka Pali Kannada is very important then it's not enough to just study but you need to remember Taranang right Tassa Taranang remember that word and you need to say it oftenly you need to speak it with your own panya nurupena and this is simply called kanta tura so every moment that you are listening and you're thinking and listening to a very insightful speech this is the fulfillment of kanta tura so I need to emphasize everyone that this is not something that you can see and you can experience in the normal schedule class but yeah here we are we have arranged the program the PhD and MA program in Buddhist Studies international program has arranged this kind of special moment and I would like to also thank to the two programs that I have said PhD in Buddhist Studies program and MA in Buddhist Studies program as well as the Tohoku University in Japan okay we have made this event possible okay so without a further delay I would like to convince everyone to join this special moment together okay and I would like to invite like the moderators like MCs that invited I would like to maybe let our MCs invite our special guest once again thank you very much everyone
Thank you very much, Ajahn, for Ajahn Sanu. And we have just noticed the presence of Ajahn Nantakon, so we are warmly to welcome Ajahn. And today, Professor Dr. Godart will share his insights on the topic Guanyin Bodhisattva in Japan. So now I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. G. Clinton Godart to begin your presentation.
Can I walk around?
yes
I like to stand. Can you hear me?
yeah but it's very
Need a mic? Oh, mic is better, right? Yeah. Okay, let's see if this works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you everybody for coming, and my apologies for making you wake up early and come to class. And I know not everybody would like to, maybe want to relax a little bit more or do some sleeping meditation, right? So I understand that. So thank you for coming. I'll try to keep it to about 1 hour. So I would like to hear what you are thinking, and maybe we have some time for questions or some debate we can do. That would be nice. It's also interesting for me. I can learn a little bit. Okay, so I'm a historian who works on modern Japan. So I just got a question from somebody: why not talk about China? Well, I don't read Chinese, and I don't study Chinese. So the reason is I'm a historian of modern Japan. So that's the topic I'm working on.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can I change the mic? This one is better.
This better?
Thank you.
Is this one better? Yeah, it's better. It's better. Okay, so good. Okay, so before this, this is actually a new topic I'm working on. You all know Guanyin Bodhisattva, of course, nothing new. It's a new topic I'm working on. Before this, I worked on Buddhism in Japan in the 19th century. So 19th century, early 20th century. The reason why I worked on that period, any idea why 19th, 20th century would be interesting to look at? We can do some Q&A right now. Any idea? Why that would be interesting? It's a period where a lot of things are changing, right? So in the 19th century, in 1853, the Americans, British, French came to Japan and made treaties with Japan, and a lot of foreigners came to Japan. Japan modernized, made modern universities like this one, like MCU, made Buddhist universities, for example, made trains, made a modern economy. Until the 19th century, Japanese people were not allowed to travel outside of Japan, right? So in the 19th century, that changed. So Japanese people could travel to the United States, could travel to Asia. So it's very interesting. For example, Buddhist monks in the 19th century, for the first time, were able to go to India and visit Bodh Gaya, where Lord Buddha lived, right? So a very interesting period. A lot of things are changing, right? So I worked on how the Buddhists looked at modern science in the 19th century. That was my topic. How did monks look at science? Not today, but how did they do that in the 19th century? Okay. So that research is finished, and now I'm working a little bit on Kannon is the Japanese pronunciation of Guanyin, right? I added the Guanyin to make it, maybe some people didn't know what Kannon is, so I added the Guanyin to make it understandable. All right. So let's look at Guanyin in modern Japan. I'll start with a little story first to entertain you. This is the Sensoji Temple in the middle of Tokyo. It's one of the most famous temples of Japan, and it's dedicated to Bodhisattva Guanyin. Lots of tourists go here. It's mainly a tourist spot. So not many monks do meditation or anything. It's just a tourist spot. But it's an interesting temple. It's from, I think, the 16th or 17th century when the city of Tokyo was made. So something interesting happened. In 1923, there was a big earthquake. Okay, big earthquake. And the earthquake happened right at the time when all the Japanese people were like cooking at home with little fires. And if you ever know what Japanese cities looked like in the 19th century and the 20th century, they were all wooden buildings. Okay, so the earthquake happened, and then there was a big fire, and about 100,000 people died in the earthquake in 1923. So it's called the Great Kanto earthquake. It's the biggest disaster in Japan until, the war, right? And something interesting happened. So this is the map of the area in central Tokyo. With the red is the fire damage. So this whole part of the city was burned. Here's the river, the Sumida River, which runs through Tokyo. And do you know what this is? This is the Asakusa Temple. The Sensoji Temple was free. And about 50,000 people fled into the temple and were saved. Right? Very interesting, right? So what happened is that the story is that 50,000 people went into the temple and chanted Namo Kanji on Bosatsu, praise to Bodhisattva Kannon. And here are all the people. Here you see the fire in the background. And we're saved by Kannon, saved by Guanyin, right? So there was a popular story that went, this is a painting I found in a temple in close to where I live in northern Japan. So this is a kind of classical form of belief in Kannon, that Kannon comes and saves you, right? Okay. I know, of course, in Theravada Buddhism, Kannon, Guanyin is not real. It's, but that's a popular form of Buddhism. But now I want to draw attention to something else that happened also. So there was a big debate going on at the time. So I'll just give one example. There was a monk called Shiori Ryochu, And he said, no, this is not real, right? Why would Kannon save all these people, right? But let 100,000 people die at the same time? That's not nice, right? Kannon is supposed to be nice, right? Why let 100,000 people die? So this is not real. This is not, he said, this is not the correct Kannon faith. Not okay, right? Some other monks were like, yeah, maybe there's something to it, right? So there was a bit of a debate going on, right? So there's a very interesting moment there. So this is just an introduction. I'm not going to here and say what correct Kannon faith is, okay? I'm a historian. I'm just looking at it. So some questions I have is, who is Guanyin and Kannon? Most of you, of course, know who Guanyin Kannon is. But what does Kannon mean, in this case, to modern Japanese Buddhists? Modern meaning in the 19th century, 20th century. And then also, what does it mean to modern Japanese people today, and also in the 19th century? How did Kannon faith change over time? Okay, so it doesn't stay the same. It changes over time. Society changes, a lot of things, people get more educated, things change over time. So how did it change is one thing I would like to know. I'm very proud that I got better at making nice PowerPoints. So I spent a lot of time on this, just so you know. Okay, so I tried to summarize this by taking 5 aspects of Kannon faith in Japan. Okay, Guanyin faith in Japan. So one is Kannon as, I'm going to just use Kannon, the word Kannon. Hope that's okay. So Kannon as a savior that you just saw, right? Kannon as art form. Kannon as nature. That's going to be more, I'll explain that later. Kannon and the military. You'll be a little bit surprised maybe, but as you know, the 20th century for Japan was a century of one war after the other. And that had an impact on Japanese Buddhism as well. So we'll see what happened with Kannon during the war, the Second World War, for example. And then after the war, Japan became a country committed to peace. So that also had an impact on how people looked at Kannon, right? Okay. I'll show you lots of pictures to entertain you. Okay. Okay, 1, Kannon as savior. So now we go back just a little bit about Kannon faith in pre-modern Japan. Okay. This is stuff you all know. It's the spread of the global spread of Buddhism in East Asia. So of course, Buddhism started in India. And then, so the type of Buddhism that came to Japan, just summarize real quickly, all comes from China and Korea, right? And then in Japan developed along its own lines, okay? So very simply put, all Buddhism in Japan is Mahayana Buddhism, right? Okay. There's a tiny Theravada presence today, but that's new, okay? I'm not going to go into a whole list, that's boring, but this is the main list of schools of Buddhism in Japan. So the Nara period was the really old, the first forms of Buddhism in Japan. They're still there in Japan, but they're very small and tiny. The big ones today, the biggest groups in Japan are the Pure Land Buddhism. That's the biggest one, Pure Land, and then the Zen school. It's very big. Zen school, Nichiren school. Those are the biggest schools in Japan. Now, one thing, by the way, if I say something wrong, you can tell me afterwards that I'm wrong. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm a big boy. I can get some criticism. Okay. So one characteristic of Buddhism in Japan is that it's very divided into schools. Very, very strongly divided. You're either with one school or you're with another school. People rarely cross from one school to the other. Right? So it's very strongly divided into sects, into denominational sects. But one interesting thing about Kannon is Avalokiteshvara is that it goes across all the sects. I'll explain a little bit about that later. Okay, so who is Kannon? This is for the Japanese perspective, right? Who is Kannon? If we look at the textual sources, right, where does Kannon appear? In Japan, and I think in China also, if I'm not mistaken, the main textual source for Avalokiteshvara is the Kannon Sutra, right? Okay, so the Kannon Sutra is originally chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra that you all know, the Lotus Sutra, right? It's chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra, but it became also an independent sutra that circulated in Japan. So now you can go to the bookstore in Japan and buy the little Kannon Sutra. I actually brought one. I can show it to you later, right? The Kegon or Avatamsaka Sutra is another very long philosophical text where Kannon appears one time. The Heart Sutra is a very short sutra, like 10 lines or so, but it's very popular in Japan. A lot of people chant it at temples and so on. And the Heart Sutra is spoken by Avalokiteshvara or Kannon, right? This one I'll skip and I'll show you maybe later. So this is like the main textual sources for where Kannon comes from in Japan. Of course, Avalokiteshvara, of course, comes from ancient India. What I've read is that perhaps Avalokiteshvara was a separate deity outside of Buddhism, that in the beginning had nothing to do with Buddhism, and was worshipped among traders that went on the ships to trade in Southeast Asia. That's what I read. I don't know if that's true. And then it got added on to Buddhism later on. Okay. In the Kannon Sutra, which is kind of the main popular source to know who or what Kannon is, a different name for that sutra is the sutra of the perceiver of the sounds of the world, right? So in Japanese, this is kan-ze-on. So this is perceive. This character is world, and this character is sound, right? So Avalokiteshvara is the one who hears the sounds of all the beings in the world. All the beings who are suffering, all animals or humans, everybody is suffering. Kannon will hear and will respond, right? Interestingly, the word compassion, we know Guanyin as the Bodhisattva of compassion, right? But compassion, actually, the word compassion is not really in the Kannon Sutra that much. It's not emphasized, actually, in the sutra. But fair enough. I mean, the sutra starts with a Bodhisattva asking Lord Buddha, says, why is Avalokiteshvara called Avalokiteshvara? Why does he have this name? Right? That's how it starts. And then Lord Buddha explains why he has this name. Well, it's because every human being that suffers, if he thinks or chants the name of Avalokiteshvara, he will immediately come and save you, right? That's what's in the sutra. So I'll just read out really quickly. It says, and then it goes through a kind of list of things a list of examples. It says, if you go and you enter a great fire, right? Because of Bodhisattva's transcendent power, the fire would not be able to burn those people. If you're on the water, if you chant the name, and you're in a storm, you're going to be safe, right? So Kannon is going to save you, right? So in the sutra, he's also called the giver of fearlessness. So you see this in Japanese paintings sometimes and calligraphies. the giver of fearlessness. This is a different name for Avalokiteshvara. Now here comes the interesting thing. In the sutra, Lord Buddha then explains that Kannon can also teach Buddhism, right? Now, of course, Buddhism is the teaching of alleviating suffering, right? So you have human suffering, you teach Buddhism, and that's the way out of suffering, right? And he can teach Buddhism according to people's different capacities. Some people are smarter, some people are a little bit less smart. Some people have a lot of bad karma, some people a little bit less bad karma, right? So Kannon can change shape, right? So in the Kannon Sutra, this is an ancient painting from Japan, where it illustrates from the Kannon Sutra how Kannon transforms into 33 different forms. Okay, 33 different forms. 33. Why 33? Because 33 is in ancient India a number that actually signifies infinity. Okay, so it's not just 33, is he can transform into an infinite number of beings. Okay. Now it's interesting in how to look at in what forms Kannon can transform. I always tell my students that Kannon is a transformer. you know the movie, The Transformers. So Kannon is a transformer, right? Okay. So, but it's interesting in what forms you can transform. In the Kannon Sutra, it actually goes through the whole classical Buddhist cosmology. So he can change into Brahma, he can change into a Deva, he can change into a king, right? And then it goes down to there, right? You can change into a government official. You can change into a merchant. You can change into a man. You can change into a woman. You can change into a child. So if a person can learn Buddhism better from Brahma, then he'll change into Brahma. If the person can learn it better from a woman, you'll change into a woman. So you will adapt, right? You will change into a naga, like a snake, or a demon. That's also possible, right? So the point is here, Kannon can change into anything, right? In Japan, classically, so this is way back, 2,000 years ago, in the 8th, 9th century. That's not 2,000 years ago, right? 8th, 9th century. Kannon was usually represented, or often represented, in a set of 6. Okay, 6 different types of Kannon. I won't go through all of them. Some you find in most of these you find in China and Tibet and so on as well. Right? This one is famous, right? The Kannon with the 11 heads, right? So do you know why the number 6? Any Mahayana experts here? Number 6. Yeah, the 6 paths of transmigration. I'm telling you stuff that you all know, right? so each one bodhisattva, one Kannon for each path of transmigration. Okay, so this is the wheel. This is the wheel of transformation. So Kannon will save all beings in each path, right? Okay, I'll go a little bit quicker on traditional. So how did most people experience Kannon faith in traditional Japan, right? In old Japan. One is pilgrimage. I'll talk about that in a minute. Another one is that specific Kannon statues became worshipped as having specific powers. This is something you see today. For example, you know this in Thailand as well. Some Buddha statues are more powerful than others to win the lottery or that kind of thing, right? Yeah. Okay, so this happened in Japan as well. So specific Kannon statues, right? There are a lot of stories in traditional Japan about salvation from Kannon. So this is Kannon literally coming to save you. And this is called in Japanese, migawari kannon. Migawari means to change shape, change body. So, for example, it would be, I'm making this up. You're a hunter and you're in the woods and you get attacked by a bear. And, between me and the bear, a deer jumps in and the bear kills the deer instead, for example, right? And the deer is kannon. He died instead of you. Okay? That's me. That's a one kind of salvation story, right? Kannon, very popular among women and women practitioners. I'll give you an example of this. So these you see in Japan a lot. This is called the giving save birth kannon. It's the koyase kannon. As you know, pre-modern times, a lot of women died giving birth, right? Because it's dangerous and so on. So they would go and pray to kannon to have a safe birth, that the woman wouldn't die and that the child would be healthy, nice boy, healthy boy, pretty girl, right? There's a passage in the Kannon Sutra which actually backs that up. It says, if any woman wanting to have a baby pays homage and makes offerings to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, she will bear a baby boy with good merit and wisdom. If she wants to have a baby girl, she will bear a beautiful and handsome baby girl who has planted roots of good merit and will have the love of sentient beings. So there's a little bit of text to back this up, right? Okay, I'll talk a little bit about pilgrimage. One thing that developed in Japan, and I think it's a little bit peculiar to Japan, is Kannon pilgrimage. You have this in China as well. Lots of people do pilgrimages to famous statues of Guanyin and so on. But in Japan, you have a specific set of 33 temples of Kannon, 33 because of the number 33, right? That became very popular. And mostly done not by monks or monastics, but by lay people. That's kind of interesting. I've been doing this as well because it's kind of fun to go to different places. So the most famous route is the Saikoku, 33 Kannon pilgrimage. Saikoku means the western country, so it's the area around Osaka, Kyoto, and the ancient capital of Nara. This is the first temple. It's really beautiful with a waterfall in the background and so on. The origins of this is a legend, an origin legend. So there was a monk called Tohoku, and he became ill, and he almost died. And he crossed the line of death, and he has to meet Emma, right, the Lord of Buddhist hell. And Emma said, no, it's not time for you to die yet. Go back and make the pilgrimage of 33 temples. So a lot of people can visit these temples and then be saved by Kannon. Right? So the pilgrimage route traditionally is that if you do the pilgrimage of 33 temples, you complete it, and then you will get a safe passage to a good rebirth. That's the traditional way of thinking about this. It's the most important and popular Kannon pilgrimage route. There are many others. So the official origin year is 718, 718, 33 temples. The length is about 1,000 kilometers, so it's actually quite a lot. A lot of this is also peculiar to Japan, I think. In Thailand, a lot of Buddha statues are nice with a lot of gold, a lot of light, right? In Japan, it's often the opposite. You have Buddha that's hidden. You can't see it. It's behind a curtain. The idea is that it doesn't matter what the statue is. You have to pray to Kannon, not the statue. Okay. Just giving you as an example, this used to be the first temple on the route called Hasedera Temple. It's a very, very large statue. I'm showing you this picture because to see the size in wood. of the 11-faced Kannon. Everybody knows the 11-faced Kannon statue, right? I assume. Okay. So what do pilgrims do? Pilgrims, they traditionally wear these kind of clothes with saying praise to Guanyin Bodhisattva in the back. We'll go to a temple, pray, bow, and then they get a little stamp from the temple. Okay, that's essentially what they're doing. Put some incense in and so on. So remember how I said that in Japan, the Japanese Buddhism is very divided into different groups. Do you remember? So one thing that's interesting about this is that if you're a layperson and you do you go to 33 different temples, they're all of different sects often. So you go to a Tendai temple, a Zen temple, a Shingon temple next. So the division between the Buddhist sects becomes a lot less, which is one interesting thing about this. A lot of pilgrims copy a sutra. So this is a kind of homage. They copy the sutra with brush and ink, write it as beautifully as they can, and then bring it to the temple and offer it to the Buddha or to Guanyin, right, to overlook it Ashra. There's a little bit of textual basis for this in the Lotus Sutra. Has everybody read the Lotus Sutra? Okay. Lotus Sutra is interesting, right? The Lotus Sutra only talks about the Lotus Sutra, right? And one thing that the Lotus Sutra says is that if you copy the Lotus Sutra, you will get a lot of merit, right? Lotus Sutra is good. So this is part of that, right? But a lot of people also they copy the Heart Sutra. Right? So one thing. This is the Saikoku one is really popular, really famous. And then it got copied in other parts of the country. Some big routes with 33 temples, longer ones, and some really short. You also have do you know how you have if you go to McDonald's or Starbucks, you can drive through, right? You can drive, order, and then get one, and you go. You also have drive-through, 33 Kannon, essentially. So you have one temple, and you have 33 stones. So you just walk past the 33 stones, and then you get it. Yay! You're safe. Okay. This one is very interesting. I'm studying this one because I live here in Sendai, and here is this is the second or third oldest pilgrimage route in Japan. It's called the Mogami route. The Mogami is a river going through Yamagata Prefecture here, and the temples are along the side of the Mogami River. So it's called the Mogami Sanju Kannon, the Mogami 33 temples. Interestingly, a lot of Kannon Guanyin temples everywhere are close to the water, close to rivers or close to the sea. In China too, the biggest ones are always close to the sea. It's very interesting. Not always, but a lot of them. These are some photos I took. I just want to show you because they're actually quite small Kannon pavilions. So you can go in. Practitioner can go pray to Kannon. Every temple has different things inside, so that we can talk about that too. I'll skip a little bit of that, but it's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about the things. In Buddhism, we like to talk about ideas and meditation and so on, of course, which is the most important. But for a lot of ordinary people, it's the things that matter a lot, right? The practitioners who do the route, if they do it the first, not everybody, but if they do it the first time, they put up a white slip on the walls of the temple. Some temples don't like it, and they say, don't put the slips here. Right? If you do the second time, I think it's blue, third time red, and then it goes on. If you do it 10 times, I think gold, That's the so some people continuously do these routes. Right? This is a kind of stamp that you get at each temple. So it says the year and the day when you came, right? Then it says, for example, great compassion or praise to the Bodhisattva, and then a stamp of the temple, something like that. These are specifically brocade ones, slips. So it also says praise to great compassionate Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara. These are of people who did it like the whole tour 100 times. Now, interestingly, some people share these. So one time I visited a temple and I talked to the monk at the temple, and they gave me a slip of somebody who did the whole Mogami tour 340 times. So this is an old couple. I want to meet them, but so people write their names and addresses on the background, right? So these are people who are continuously pilgrims. They're always on pilgrimage route, essentially, right? One thing I want to draw your attention to is that pilgrimage in this way, like continuously doing pilgrimage, sounds very traditional, right? But it's not, because you remember I mentioned the Saikoku route is about 1,000 kilometers. In ancient times, if you have to walk 1,000 kilometers, most people don't have time for that. If you're a farmer, you cannot go and walk 1,000 kilometers and leave your farm. No, you cannot do that. So who did the pilgrimage tour? Specialist monks who meditated, studied the text. They did it maybe once. 1,000 kilometers is a lot to walk, right? Today, you can go with train, with a car, with a bicycle, and so on, right? So doing the route 340 times is impossible in ancient Japan, but you can do it today, right? So it's a new thing, actually, right? So please keep that in mind. It's interesting. I talked to one monk, and he said that, yeah, it's nice that people do this, but if you do all these routes, in order to show, I did this, right? Show to people off, like I did so many times, then it goes a little bit against the idea, right? Of letting go of ego, right? It becomes a thing to show off, right? That's what he said. I'll leave it up to your judgment. Okay, so who did these tours? Often in Japan, there were groups of lay people who would go to a specific temple every month and to chant the Kannon Sutra. That happened every month. Or they would get together and do the whole tour, every couple of years. Quite often, as you can see in this photograph, there were lay women, but sometimes also men, and sometimes men and women. But the important thing is usually lay women who did this. Okay, so this is still going on. But anyway, so that's one phase of Kannon, right? Kannon is somebody who saves you, right? So let's look at what happens in modern Japan. How much time, how long have I been talking? Half an hour? 40 minutes already? Oh, sorry, okay. I'll try and speed up a little bit. Okay, what happens in the modern period? Modern period, you got something like called modern Buddhism, modernist Buddhism, where there was a lot of criticism of Buddhism in Japan at the time, saying Buddhism is not useful. We need to modernize the country, build factories, build railroads, and we don't need Buddhism. So the monks tried to reinvent Buddhism a little bit and focus on saying Buddhism is scientific, Buddhism is useful, Buddhism is important for modern Japan, right? So they focused on Buddhist philosophy, throw away like rituals. So for example, Buddhist monks doing ritual to have rain for the fields, for the crops, they would say, no, that's not Buddhism. Out. So very rational forms of Buddhism came up. I'll skip this one. Now, Kannon kind of became important again in Japan. I'll skip a couple of these because otherwise it'll take too long. But one thing that happens is that people, I want to focus on this one, that people started to read the Kannon Sutra in a different way, I think. So that's one thing I want to focus on. The second is that people focused on Kannon as something that can unify Japanese Buddhism. Pilgrimage became more important. These are all things that are new, right? So we have new journals. This happened in Thailand as well, right? You have journals that are printed. You have books that are printed, bookshops. More people can read, right? So in the past, lay people often couldn't read, right? And monks were the people who can read, who can write, right? In modern times, that often changes, right? You have the lay people who go to university. They can read a lot. They know a lot of science. So a lot of things changed, right? One thing that has quite a big influence is the idea of Buddhism as art, right? You know, I've heard of the idea of Buddhist art. But Kannon statues, for example, Kannon statues or Buddhist statues were not art in the past, right? They were considered objects of worship, right? But now we get art. So we say, well, this is kind of cool, right? We have Japanese art, right? And I wanted to show you this painting. What do you think of this painting? I just want to hear, before I start talking about it, what do you think of this painting? This Kannon painting? Anything? Do you know, has anybody seen it before? It's very famous in Japan. Right? No? Okay, what is your impression of this? Anything is fine. Yeah, interesting. Has a mustache, right? Yes. So there's a bit of traditional Chinese representation in there, right? Yes, correct. What else? This is the water of compassion. That's going down to what? Little baby, right? Who's little baby? Any idea? Huh? All of us, right? Maybe. We don't know because the artists never really explained this, right? This kind of looks traditional, but it's not, because Kannon or Guanyin was never portrayed in the past with a little baby like that floating in the sky. But this is a painting that had a lot of influence, and you see this painting copied in many, many temples in Japan. So this is another thing that changed. You remember I mentioned a lot of Buddha statues and Kannon statues in Japan were hidden, like you can't see them. What happened in the 19th century is that some of them were open, and we have a new technology called photography. You all know photography. So these statues were photographed and printed into journals and books, and now everybody in the country can see these statues on photos. Right? It's something we're all used to, seeing Buddha statues on photos and seeing things on photos, but you have to remember that in the 19th century, that was still a new thing. Right? That didn't happen for everybody, right? So it's something new that happens. Okay, let's look at the third one. I call it Kannon as nature. So new ways of looking at the Kannon Sutra. I'm picking up a couple of very famous monks from the 19th century. This one is called, I forgot to put his name, he's called Shakusoan. He was a Zen monk from the Zen Buddhist tradition. Okay, let's go to the same passage we read before, right? We read this before, remember? Even those who hold the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara were to enter a great fire. Because of this Bodhisattva's transcendent power, the fire could not be able to burn them. If they were adrift on the great waters, by chanting his name, they would reach the shallows, right? We read this, right? Buddha, the Bodhisattva will save you from fire, will save you from drowning, right? Very concretely. Right? But now we're gonna, in a modern period, which is 19th century, is people starting to read this differently. What is the fire? Any idea? What is the fire? How can you interpret fire? What is if you feel fire inside you? Huh? Fire is the anger. Anger, you feel like burning anger, right? What about if you feel drowning? Huh? Desire. So, and there's another one, which is delusion, of course. Greed, hatred, delusion. He says, so it's not, he said, you should read this text in a different way. It's not Avalokiteshvara coming to save you. It's if you think, if you are mindful of the Bodhisattva at a moment that you feel angry because somebody cut you off in traffic. So you think, let's think about Avalokiteshvara. Okay, maybe that person has some problems, right? So your fire your anger will go away, right? Same for desire, same for delusion. That's the kind of way that he wanted to read it. You remember this passage? If any woman wants to have a baby boy, pays homage, she will get a nice baby boy. If you pray to Avalokiteshvara, if you want a nice girl, you get a nice, beautiful girl. You remember this one? Right? So he says, you read it differently. He said, if you are a mother and, you keep the precepts, you pray to the Bodhisattva, you are mindful, you're going to have a healthy body, you're going to have a good baby boy, and you're going to have a good baby girl, right? That's what he said. So the different way of reading it, right? So he says there's two ways of reading the Kannon Sutra. One is literally, and the other one is figuratively, right? He calls it the subjective interpretation. So he says the subjective interpretation, you yourself, he says, you are actually a manifestation of Kannon. So Kannon here becomes the truth of the universe, right? Wisdom, compassion, right? I, the one who is speaking today too, is to the best of my abilities, a fragment of Kannon. You yourself are all incarnations of Kannon. We are all originally manifestations of Kannon. So if you keep that in your mind at all times, you become a better person. It's kind of a form of meditation, I guess. So he says, so the Kannon, by the way, a lot of people don't like the Kannon Sutra because it tells, how the Bodhisattva just saves you. But he says if you read it differently, it teaches you the whole Buddhist path in a nutshell. It's like a short teaching of the whole of Buddhism. And he specifically singles out three virtues: compassion, wisdom, and courage. These are the ones that you should cultivate as a lay Buddhist, right? I'll quickly go through this one. So there's another passage from the Kannon Sutra. Said, if there's hundreds of thousands of sentient beings who enter the great oceans seeking treasures such as gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, etc., etc. If a cyclone would blow the ship away, to the land of the demons, but if one person would think of Avalokiteshvara, they will all be fine. Okay, so what is this? Is what one scholar said, Watanabe Kagyoku. He says, these treasures that we're looking for are not real treasures. What are they? They are faith, energy, contemplation, renunciation. These are Buddhist virtues, right? If we look for them and get thrown off the path, right, by the cyclone, how do we get thrown off the path? By greed, hatred, and delusion, the root kilesas, right? And the ship, he says the ship, that's the 6 paramita, right? So it's a different way of reading the Kannon. I personally think this might be because lay people got more educated and wanted to hear a different version of this text, but that's a different story. So quite a number of Japanese Buddhists, so apart from if you agree with this or not, started to see Kannon as a symbol of wisdom, symbol of compassion, but also symbol of the universe itself, of truth itself. So, for example, Satuichi Jakusho, she was a writer and she became a monk. She said, Kannon is a symbol of the great life of the universe. Right? That comes up a lot. That comes up a lot in modern Buddhism. Some monks go even as far as to say, Kannon doesn't exist. Kannon is not real. You yourself are Kannon, meaning you as in the virtue of compassion, the virtue of wisdom, right? Okay, last one. Oh, no, one more. Fourth phase of Kannon, I think. Kannon as militarism. So this is a bit of a darker aspect of modern Japan. You all know this, I assume. So in modern Japan, you have the Sino-Japanese War, Russo-Japanese War, 1904, 1905. Japan colonizes Taiwan, colonizes Korea, invades China, and then goes to war with Britain and the United States. Right? A lot of people died. What you get in Japan in this period is a heavy form of militarism. Militarism meaning that the military takes center stage in the country. And all boys have to study how to become a soldier, essentially. This affects Buddhism as well, unfortunately. This is an unfortunate aspect, but this really happened. Just want to give you one example. This is a naval officer called Ogasawara Naganari. He is he's a naval officer. He's in the Navy. He's very famous. He wrote a lot of books, and he was a really strong believer in Avalokiteshvara. Right? But he was also a militarist. So these two went hand in hand. I actually learned he visited Bangkok one time. He went to Bangkok in the 1930s. So what happened to him? This is in 1894. He was on a ship fighting the Chinese Navy, and he had a dream. Okay, what happened in the dream? He dreamt he was standing on the deck of the ship, and he saw the enemy ships, and he saw a shell coming from the enemy ship, exploding on the ship, and he looked, and his arm was gone. That's what he saw in a dream. Okay? He woke up. Next morning, he stood on the ship. The Chinese ships, the enemy, came, and he ran away. A shell came and landed in his hut where he was sleeping, the place where he slept on the ship. Now, he brought with him a little portable Kannon statue, like a little one like this. Somebody gave it to him as a present. And he looked inside the statue, and the arm was gone. One arm was gone. So he thought, wow, Avalokiteshvara saved me, right? He kept this secret and only published this much later, after the Great Kanto earthquake, when people started to talk about this. Anyway, he wrote several books on, this is Kannon stories about people being saved by Avalokiteshvara. The faith in Kannon in our imperial nation. Right? So what are the things that he emphasized? He emphasized universal compassion, no big surprise. But also other things that were a little bit surprising. He says, reverence to Kannon means paying reverence to Japan and to the emperor. Right? Courage. Right? Do you remember I said that Kannon is the giver of fearlessness? That's good for soldiers, right? Right? That's good for soldiers. So he emphasized that. He said, giver of fearlessness. That's what you need when you go to battle, right? He said, gratitude is important. Devoutness is important. I'll skip a couple. But he also said there's a kind of nationalism here. He says, yeah, Kannon Guanyin is famous in China and Taiwan as well. But there's a special connection between Japan and Guanyin. Guanyin likes Japan more. Okay? Simply put. But, okay. I don't believe this is the case, of course, just to get this on the record. But you see this in this period a lot. You see Japan was very nationalist at the time, and you have a lot of ideas like this circulating. So, for example, a lot of Japanese Buddhists would say, they won't say this anymore, right? But at the time in the past, they would say, yes, Buddhism started in India, then came to China, and it got a little, it became Mahayana, which is a little bit better, right? And then it came to Japan, and the Japanese made it the best form of Buddhism, right? So yeah, Buddhism is not from Japan, but we made it the best Buddhism. Right? People don't say this anymore, okay? Not today. It's in the past. Okay, let's get this clear, okay? I won't go to everything, but I'll skip this one a little bit too much. Well, I'll just give one thing. He started to write stories of famous soldiers and sailors who died in battle. Okay, so this is, for example, a story of Hirose Takeo. He's the most famous sailor in modern Japan. He died during the Russo-Japanese War. His ship was sinking, and he was an officer, but the people below him, like the younger sailors, were drowning. He jumped in to save them, right? And died. So Ogasawara picked this up as a story and said, this is the spirit of Kannon. To save others and die in battle is the true faith of Kannon. Okay, that's the kind of thing. So here you got a kind of way that Kannon gets tied to militarism, right? This is the creation of a really big Buddha statue that was called the Raise Asia Kannon. Okay, it looks nice, Raise Asia, but this is Japanese war propaganda. Okay, during the war, yes, Japan invaded China, but also Japan fought with Britain and the United States. And the war propaganda they were giving at the time was that Japan is liberating Asia from Western colonialism, from Western imperialism. So we're going to raise Asia up, right? We're doing something good for Asia. That was the dominant aspect. So Kannon gets kind of mobilized for this as well. So here you have the Raise Asia Kannon, right? This is a wartime propaganda poster that kind of really shows this, right? So the Japanese soldier liberating Asia from the chains of America, Britain, China, and the Dutch for some reason. Okay, last one. Japan, of course, loses the war, 1945. And Japan gets a new constitution, abolishes its military officially. Japan stops to be an imperialist power and officially became a country committed to peace. Okay, so Japan has not been at war since 1945. So Japan's official policy at the time came, okay, we're done with all the wars. We're going to be a country committed to peace. And most of the Buddhist schools too, they started to emphasize pacifism, right? In Japanese, heiwa shugi. Okay, we can say maybe, okay, Buddhism always committed to peace, but this is something that in Japan at least became emphasized only after the war. If you look before the Second World War, very few Buddhists would say, you know, Buddhism is for world peace. Some would say that, but most would not. Right? But after the war, it becomes, I think, what you see in Japan a lot now after the war are heiwa kannon, so Buddhist, so kannon statues specifically devoted to world peace. So you have a lot of those. Interestingly, some of these statues were actually had a different name. They used to be like Victory in War Kannon, and then became, you know, after the war, like, oh, that doesn't look that good anymore. So they changed the name. Right, that happens sometimes. Right? Peace Kannon. This is one in Hiroshima. You know, Hiroshima, where the atomic bomb exploded, is a peace kannon. So there are a lot of these in Japan today. Also, big kannon statues to commemorate the war dead. A lot of people, Japanese people too, died in war. So there's a lot of statues like that. Really quickly, I came 5 days ago to Bangkok. Not the first time, my 6th time. But I was looking into the Guanyin temples in southern Thailand, and there are quite a number. It's quite interesting, right? This is one of the oldest temples in Bangkok, apparently. Did you know that? It's on the other side of the Chao Phraya River, and it's a little Guanyin pavilion. You know Wat Arun, a little bit south of Wat Arun. No, yeah, little bit south of Wat Arun, maybe like 15 minutes walk. And you immediately like, this is very, very Chinese, right? The whole architecture is Chinese. The Guanyin statue is Chinese. You remember most of these are again located with water. So I think probably it's in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, you had a big trading network with Chinese traders trading with Singapore, Southeast Asia, even Japan. And these traders settled in the area of Bangkok and then made statues for Guanyin, which is quite interesting. So one thing I want to know a little bit more is Guanyin in Thailand. I'm kind of interested in this. This is just one example. This is a temple, Wat Marjan, of the Theravada forest tradition of the Tamayut sect, right? So quite conservative, right? However, interestingly, Wat Marjan has a shrine to Avalokiteshvara. Quite interesting. Although officially, my understanding is that in Theravada, Guanyin is not really part of it, right? But it's interesting. One Theravada monk, I'm not going to mention his name, said to me, one way to understand this, you can disagree with this is fine. One way to understand it is maybe in the Pali Canon, there is a mention of something called Devanusati. So thinking of the Devas is going to be good for you, essentially, good for your mind. You get a better mind state. So maybe praying to Kannon, thinking of Kannon is kind of similar to that, to a similar working, similar effect on your mind, which is kind of similar to what the Japanese monks are saying today. Right. Oh, you met him? Oh, wow. Please tell me, because I don't know.
Because he visited China for 5 times,
Uh-huh.
and one time he did samadhi.
Yeah.
And the Guanyin reincarnation, one of the reincarnation of Guanyin
Uh-huh.
came to his dream.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
also, he made a joke with him. Because cannot drinking alcohol. This is one of the 5 precepts, right?
Yeah.
And the image of Guanyin is a monk.
Yeah.
You know Jigong?
Uh-huh.
Jigong is a Chinese monk,
Uh-huh.
and it's taken as the reincarnation.
Uh-huh.
And so he persuaded him and to have a drink. He said, no, I should follow. But my disciple can. The major disciple came together with him, and when he come out of the samadhi, and he found the disciple was drunk very much with the right face, and since then he became worship.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. See, I'm glad that I came today because I didn't know this. Yeah. One Theravada monk I heard from, he believes that maybe in a past life he was a Mahayana monk, so he has a special connection with Mahayana. Okay, so really quickly, very simple, easy conclusion is that you remember Kannon is a little bit of a transformer. So Kannon faith also changes through the times, and I think maybe there are 2 kinds of Kannon faith. One is the traditional, if you will, salvation, where Kannon comes and saves you, Avalokiteshvara comes and saves you. But the other one is a more philosophical one, a kind of devotion, that even if Kannon doesn't really exist, it can still be kind of a helpful practice for your Buddhist practice. That's what some people say. So I'm going to end here. I hope it wasn't too long. Thank you for your attention. Maybe we can have a chat. Yes, please, questions. Yeah, keep this one. I'm going to have a drink of water.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your very good presentation today. And actually, I'm also taught in Mahayana Buddhism.
Oh.
In Thailand, the Avalokitesvara in Thailand, I think it's already exists in Thailand more than
Really long
1,000
time
years
ago,
ago,
right? Yeah,
more than 1,000 years ago in
Yeah.
a different period.
Yeah.
But in Thailand, in the Southeast Asia, the Avalokitesvara form is quite different from China and Japan.
More male form, right?
Yeah, male and female position, something like that.
Yeah.
So I would, for my questions, I would like to know in the early of Japan Buddhism, concerns about Avalokitesvara is a male or female?
Oh yeah. Interesting question. Okay, let's go back. Okay, good question. One second. Thank you very much. I'm only just starting to study about Avalokitesvara in Thailand, so it's not really my specialty. One second. Where are we? Here we are. It changes a bit over time. Some Avalokitesvaras were clearly more male, with like a mustache and so on, more robust and so on. The one that we know today with the long robes, the white one, right? It's called the white-robed Guanyin, comes from China, right? It's more recent. It's like from the last 300 years or so, I think. So it changes over time. I think today, most Japanese people would think of Guanyin as female. But throughout history, people who know and study a little bit know that that's not the case. In the past, often as male, and then gradually becomes more female. By the way, this is the Bato Kannon, clearly male, has a really angry face. Very interesting, very different form of Avalokitesvara compared to the one that we're familiar with, right? So the answer changes over time, right? Yeah. So this is also debated, by the way, in the modern period. You see, some monks say, Guanyin is female, and that's a a kind of compassionate side, while others say no. Guanyin is neither male nor female. Right? So it really depends who you're talking to. Thank you. Yeah, I can transform into anybody. That's the point, right? We can transform into anything, and it's changing over time, right? I think it will change in the future too, right?
In your opinion, you think this is because of the Samantabhadra, Samantamukha in the Rota Sutta impact to this art, or because of the local cultures change the positions of the Avalokitesvara?
Probably. I'm not an expert on pre-modern statues, so I'm not certain whether that's the case. But probably I do think the Lotus Sutra had an influence on that canon can change into different forms. There's not one description of what canon looks like, right? The Canon Sutra doesn't explain what canon looks like, actually. It just says canon can change. That's what it says. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Do you have time?
maybe later. Okay, after me. Thank you for your very excellent presentation regarding the Guanyin, Japan, modern Japan. Well, actually, I would like to ask the first question, but Ajahn Ananda already asked. Yeah.
Okay.
This is so classical, question regarding the gender of the Guanyin.
Yes.
Perspective. But this is not a question, but more like a discussion. Okay. Based on your presentation, there seems to be a role. One important role of the Guanyin is the protector, or something like that, which is related to the Marvel or super normal power.
Yeah, yes,
like,
a little bit, yes.
If a fire to burn all the places, if the Guanyin exists in that world, in that place, then the fire cannot be burned, something like that. I think I would like to support this idea because in Buddhism there are many ways that we judge. One way to judge about this phenomenon is the dependent origination is Dhamma, the law of Dhamma, right? The Buddha. There are many stories that the fire cannot be, burn or harm anyone who protect, especially when we are, doing, thinking about the Buddha, something, saying the name, something like that. In one parita, which is the protective chanting, is called Vattaka Padit. There was a small bird that is the Bodhisattva bird, Nokum. Yeah, and that bird is to burn, living in lonely, left over by their parents, only him. But this Bodhisattva bird chanting the name and thinking about his entity, because right now, at that time, he was a Bodhisattva bird, so the fire cannot harm him. This is one story to support why Guanyin statue is live unprotected, unharmed by the fire. And one story is the story in the Dhammapada commentary is Makantiya, Makantiya, something like that. Makantiya is she finally attained to the Nibbana, but her past life he burned, he harmed with fire the Pacceka Buddha, something like that. So that bad karma burned her. Something like that.
Interesting.
But from the point of the supermarvel, supernatural power, the Buddha also accept the existence of this, marvelous protective as well.
Yes. Yeah, protective powers, right? Yes. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, that's very good.
Please.
There's a question back there and one back there. Oh, I think one question was early. Okay. Sorry.
Morning, Ajahn. I have actually one question and two other interpretations that I would like to share and would like to ask for your opinion. The first question is that I would like to know about the first time when canon worshipping starts in Japan, because as far as I know, Japan, it's, before that, Shintoism, and the cultures of sumo, samurai were prevalent in Japan, and Japan is considered as a masculine society. But canon worshipping seems to worship figures who are in the female figures. So how the Japanese people, particularly the male Japanese, accept canon worshipping? Because from the pictures that you show in the presentation, the lay community who worship canon seem to be more female than male. So how can you interpret, the masculine Japanese cultures adopt and accept canon worshipping? That is my first question.
Oh, okay. Okay, couple of things going on. So, okay, the female groups I mentioned are later. They start like in the 17th, 18th century, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I'm not sure if I would say that, Japan was always male dominant. I think most societies probably were in the past and still today. I'm not sure if I would say Japan is particularly masculine culture. I'm not sure if I agree with that. Either way, canon worship comes to Japan from the beginning. So Buddhism came to Japan about the 5th century. So it's mostly Koreans who first brought Buddhism to Japan. And already in the beginning, the earliest temples that are made, you see images of canon. Also, one of the big founders, the prince Shotoku Taishi, was said to be a reincarnation of canon, for example. So it's there from the earliest beginning. But then I think one of the things about canon, as I mentioned, it can change into anything, right? So in the past there are male forms of bodhisattva, of Kannon that are worshipped by the males, but there are also female practitioners also in the medieval times who write about Kannon. Guanyin was very popular among the samurai as well. And then in the modern period during the war, the Second World War already mentioned, you have a form of aggressive Kannon almost, right? A kind of Kannon as the giver of fearlessness, male courage. Courage is a male virtue. That was propagated, right? So that works well together with the military, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Unfortunately,
and there are two other things relating to the interpretation of Guanyin or Canon Bodhisattva in Vietnamese cultures, and I would like to share 2 points. The first thing is the baby boy. Canon gives the baby boy and the baby girl to those who worship it. And then one Vietnamese interpretation is that the boy represents the wisdom and the girl represents compassion. So actually giving the baby boy and baby girl here means that the two facets of Buddhism, one is wisdom and the other is compassion.
Compassion, yes.
Yeah, so that's why. And, people who want to get enlightenment need to have both both things like wisdom and compassion together, and that is one interpretation. And the other interpretation about the what you say the military feature of the Bodhisattva in Vietnam. We also have the interpretation of this. Guanyin Bodhisattva in Vietnam is considered in two facets. The first one is to give reward to the wholesome deeds, and the other is to give punishment to the evil power. So that's why we can consider that it's the other facet of the Bodhisattva. The how can I say the military facet is understood as to punish the evils in order to promote the wholesome. So that's the interpretation in this culture. So
that's interesting.
So what your points of view on that, on these two interpretations? Thank you.
The first one I'm very interested in because I think I've read similar interpretations in Japan. So I'm very interested in where that comes from in Vietnam. So if you can explain me where that comes from later, that would be great. The second, I haven't seen, I might be wrong because there's so much. Like Kannon is we're talking about 2,000 years of Buddhist history, right? I haven't seen so much Kannon as punishment, except for maybe Bato Kannon, the horse-headed Kannon here. Where is he? Here. You can't really see him. I wanted to upload a picture, but I forgot. He has an angry face, and he is angry not with people, but with the kilesa, greed, hatred, and delusion. That's what he's angry with, as far as I understand.
I'd like to make clear that because in Vietnam Buddhism, we also have some statue that shows the God who has a very very strong face and can even though that we don't call it Guanyin, but we believe that it is the manifestation of the Bodhisattva.
Oh, really?
Yes,
interesting.
In another facet, and that statue always, you can find that statue in almost every pagoda in Vietnam, and it shows that that Bodhisattva, that deity will punish the evil if you have any kind of harmful intention when you come into to pagoda. So that's why it is that's why I say that in Vietnamese culture we also say that the Bodhisattva, one manifestation of the Bodhisattva is to punish the cruelty or punish the evil.
I see. Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad I came learning. Thank you very much. It's really helpful for me too. Please.
Thank you for all of my audience. And my question is, I want to know the relationship between the Thailand and the Japan, based on the idea and the importance of the Avalokite Swara and the Pinya Paramita Buddhist statue. Because I saw last 2 months in the Kanchanaburi city in the historic part in the monument or the temple.
Oh yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the relation between Avalokiteshvara in Japan and Thailand. The relation? Sorry, not much relation. I just added that at the last minute.
Okay.
Because I thought it was interesting. I wanted to hear what people had to say. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit unclear. My apologies. Not much relation between, except one relation maybe, because it's a lot of it is influenced by China, right?
Okay.
And the Guanyin statues in Thailand, from my understanding, except for the really old ones, right, are influenced by China. And Japan was also influenced by China. So some of the statues you see are from Chinese origin. So in that sense, it's part of the bigger Chinese influence sphere, if you will.
Okay.
But not much between Japan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. Sorry, it was a bit unclear. Yeah.
Oh, I have like a very practical question.
Sure.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm actually flying to Japan today.
Oh,
tonight.
No way.
Yeah.
Which one? Are you tonight on a flight?
Like, yeah, like midnight. Like
yeah, me
12.
too.
No way.
Yeah.
2 a.m.
Wait.
You're going back to Japan.
Yeah, go to.
I'm flying to Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm flying to Osaka first. To Korea first.
I'm going to Osaka after.
Oh,
and then
nice.
Nara.
Okay.
Yeah. So, do you have any recommended places?
How much time do you have?
I'm going there for like 2 weeks, but I'm going to do you know Dustin DiPerna? He's Ken Wilber's student, like a Stanford professor. I'm taking a course there. But I'm also exploring. So do you like recommend any places to visit in Japan? Like or highest energy of like similar to this? Or do you feel like any places that you feel very spiritual and it's like worth visiting?
If you visit any place, it's a bit far to go. But are you in the Kansai region? Are you in Tokyo, staying in Tokyo, or are you staying in Osaka, Kyoto?
Both. I'm going to Tokyo and then I fly to Osaka and yeah.
Okay. Let me think. Well, the whole Saikoku pilgrimage is around the city of Osaka, right? Osaka, Kyoto, Nara here, right? If you can, I would say this one is really interesting. Okay. Hasedera, yeah.
This is in Osaka?
This is outside of Nara.
Okay. Nara.
You have to sacrifice a day for this.
I'm going to, my course is in Nara.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But it's Nara outside the city. So you have to sacrifice a bit of a day for that. But it's really beautiful. It's in the mountains. It takes some time. It's a huge statue, but it's interesting. It's in a room. So you have to kind of crawl and go in. And all of a sudden you stand right in front of the statue. I mentioned a lot of Buddha statues are hidden in Japan. Secret. This one is not. So it's nice. It's interesting. So I would say this one. That was very impressive for me. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Have a great trip.
Thank you. Arigato.
どういたしまして。
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
I have two questions. First, Japan, how is the relationship between the Guanyin and Sakyamuni Buddha?
Oh.
How do you explain to the Buddhist?
That's a good question. Okay. Sure, this is a bit more technical, but for a lot of Guanyin statues in Japan are actually more related to Amitabha. So a lot of statues have a little Amitabha, like there's a little Amitabha in the crown, and he is the messenger of Amitabha. And the Pure Land School, the two Pure Land schools, they're the biggest in Japan together. So it's more of that. So it's more closely related to Amitabha in the Pure Land School. I mean, in traditional settings in Japan, you have sometimes Shakyamuni Buddha, and then you have 2 bodhisattvas on each side. You have Guanyin and another one. And then you have the 4 guardian deities on the side. So you have a kind of set. I didn't have a photograph here, but that's one way where Guanyin appears in a set with Shakyamuni Buddha, as you understand. I'm not an expert on Buddha statues, by the way, but I'm doing my best. But that's one way how it's related. So as a helper, assistant to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Oh, thank you. And the second question is, the people who believe in Guanyin seem hope more blessing from the Guanyin, and they want to get the blessing and to protect from the Guanyin. And so, is there any way to integrate the self-cultivation Buddhism practicing with the blessing of Guanyin?
With the blessing of Guanyin?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, that's kind of what I was trying to say with these more modern readings, I think, is that I think, okay, my impression is that there are different kinds of people who expect different things, right? So you have people who do pilgrimage and they do it, why? Because they want to help their mother who is sick, for example, right? They just want the blessings. They're not interested in what the sutra says and so on. But then, I mentioned the self-cultivation part, right? I went a little bit quick, but these monks and these people, they write a lot of books, right? And articles. For who do they write? You have to ask who do they write for? They write for lay people, not for fellow Buddhists. So they write for lay people that are published. You can find them in bookstores, right? And I think maybe in those days, this is early 20th century Japan, you have a lot more people who went to university or are highly educated, and they say, well, I don't want the blessings from Bodhisattva Guanyin, that's superstition, right? So, but I want to engage in a different way. So they connected more. This appeals more to modern people, let's put it this way, right? If you don't believe that Guanyin can give you blessings, you can still read the Kannon Sutra and connect it with self-cultivation, right? Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it depends who you talk to. So I think both exist at the same time, right? Yeah.
Sorry again about my questions. In China, questions about the name of Avalokitesvara is divided. Basically, I know there's 3 names. Guanyin, Guanyin, Guanzisai, and maybe they have another. And in the Japanese translations, they have like this a discussion about the original name of the Avalokitesvara. What words could use to use in communicators, propagators, something like that.
So the different name, what the names are in Japanese? Or?
My question is in China.
Yeah,
it's going to have a different name.
Different name. Oh, I see. Okay.
So this problem also exists in Japan and
I see. Yes. The only thank you. The only names that I am aware of, but I might be wrong. Again, I don't know everything, especially about pre-modern Japan. Give me 1 second. The ones that are most prevalent in Japan are this one, and this one comes from Chinese, right? So of course it's Kannon as just the Japanese pronunciation of the same characters, right? Because the sutra is written when it comes to Japan, it's written in Chinese, right? So this is just the Chinese translation pronounced in Japanese. So Kanzeon, that's most prevalent in pre-modern Japan. Then it gets abbreviated to become Kannon. That's how most people use it now. And then the third one is the giver of fearlessness, Samui. So different. So giving, the gift of not having being afraid of calamities such as fire and disease and so on. Right? Those are the only 3 I know, but there might be different ones. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure.
Because in China is a different translation, different period.
Different period, okay.
For example, before Kumara Shiva period,
yes.
It translates to be a Guanyin.
Oh, I see.
Shiva period, it
Yeah.
translates to be a Guanyin.
Okay.
And in Xuanzang, it translates to be a Guanzizai.
Yeah. Kanjizai. Yeah, that happens in Japan as well. Kanjizai. Yeah. Yes. That exists too. Yeah. They both. I think they both come to Japan. The translation. Yeah. Kanjizai. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. Lots of questions. That's what I came for. If I'm just talking, I can, that's not interesting. I can stay at home.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. So what I understand about the canon and the Bodhisattva, it's one kind of Bodhisattva, right? The canon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what I understand is like that some people, they believe that the canon is male.
Uh-huh.
Some, they believe that the canon is female.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of arguments about male, female, whatever is it.
Yeah.
So what I understand is that canon can be changed or appear in any kind of aspects.
Right.
Male, female, anything.
Yeah.
So the canon actually is a Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is the form of the truth body of Buddha, all the Buddhas. So they are the truth body of all the Buddhas.
Yes, it's another interpretation.
Still exists until and unless all the human beings liberate from this samsara.
Mm-hmm.
They will exist.
Yes.
They are exist in any kind of aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the people, they misunderstood that, and lots of argument that Bodhisattva, like a canon, is the male, female. So it can be any appear in anything. You cannot say it's male, female. It can be appear in anything. Yeah. So my point is like that. So the Bodhisattva is actually the truth body of all the Buddha, who liberate all the human beings from the samsara. So it can be appear in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is my point. I want to share like this.
Thank you. Thank you. I would probably agree with that personally too. I think that's also what a lot of some more modern monks are trying to say. So when they, for example, say that, for example, here, like I say, canon is a great life of the universe. That's a different way of saying canon is a symbol of the truth, right? The truth of the universe. It's kind of a similar way of saying it. Yes. So then you interpret canon appearing in 33 forms as canon can appear in anything. And the truth is everywhere, right? So that's another way of saying it. Right?
Yes. So like those who are people like Mahatma Gandhi and the Thai king, right, Rama.
Yeah.
So we believe they are also emanation body of the canon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's one way of. I do think the interpretations change over time. That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I heard you're all getting hungry. Monks are getting hungry. Please, yes. Sorry?
Okay, last question.
In where? In
real person, okay? Like who play at Guanyin Bodhisattva.
Oh, if there was a real person?
Yeah.
No.
Is there any real person?
No. So that's interesting, right? Yeah. So
like in China,
yeah.
Guanyin Bodhisattva actually from the real person, right? And then
the later one, there's a different story. I know, yeah. There's a really, stop asking questions about China, because there's a really good book. There's a really book by a Chinese scholar who teaches at Columbia, and the book is called just Guanyin. It's an 800-page book on how canon Guanyin transforms from ancient India into China. read the book. It's fantastic. Right. So it talks about all the different forms of China. So, but yeah, that's one interesting thing. I mean, we know that Lord Buddha was an actual real person, right? But nobody's saying that Kannon was an actual real person. There's nothing that says that. Right? So I'm personally also okay with the interpretation that Kannon doesn't exist. That's okay with me too. I think there are different ways of looking at it. Right? Thank you. Thank you. Oh.
I will invite you personally to your class.
Okay. How are you? Everybody getting hungry? I was told to be careful with it.
Dear Chan and dear our special guests and everyone. So as we conclude today's enlightening session on Guanyin Bodhisattva in Japan, we reflect on the profound insights shared by Associate Professor Dr. G. Clinton Godart. Your exploration of Guanyin, the embodiment of compassion in Japanese Buddhism, had deepened our understanding of how this respective spiritual influence in spiritual practice and daily life in Japan.
Yes, Pikuni, Dr. Godart, expertise, has provided us with one of Dr. Godart expertise had provide us with valuable insight into the history and tradition of Guanyin Bodhisattva worship in Japan. He has also shared Japanese perspective on integrating the principle of compassion and peace into Japanese life. Gaining this knowledge sharpens our understanding of the diversity of Buddhist belief, particularly in Japan, and allow us to apply this teaching to foster compassion, strengthen relationship, and contribute to more harmonized society.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Godart for your generosity in sharing your knowledge and for inspiring us to embody the virtues of Guanyin Bodhisattva. We wish you continue health, happiness, and success in on your efforts. And on behalf of the PhD and MA classes, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude and deep respect to your sharing and valuable knowledge experience with us. So we would like to invite Achan Nantakon and Achan Anon to present gift. Yeah.
Thank you for all the questions. I learned a lot. Thank you.
And second, Achan Anon will give. Also, Achan Sadhu.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Like I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sanu will present gift. Okay, big clap hand to present.
Okay, next we will have a group photo, please.
Everybody.
We all stand. อันนี้ไม่ต้องเก็บแล้วมั้งปล่อยไว้เงี้ยนะเอาตัวนี้เอาเก้าอี้ออก
Oh, that's good. That's good. Really.
There are a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Time
good.
very short. Maybe next time I'd like you to please share your knowledge again.
Oh yes, yes, I would be happy to come. It's really inspiring to come and. It's okay. Thank you.
ยืนข้างคนสูง
Monks come. All the monks.
Second line, please.
Okay.
อันนี้จอห์นสงวนเอาไว้ป่ะยืนซ้ายยืนขวาดีกว่ามั้ยยืนซ้ายยืนขวา
ท่านจอห์นต้องขึ้นข้างบนแล้วด้วยทางจอห์นพักขึ้นดีกว่าให้ผู้หญิงขึ้น
ไม่ว่าน
Can I get a
ไม่ว่าน
มหาเหมียว